Yo, what up, everybody? What up? Let me tell the homie Kris I'm live. What up, what up, Sam Sneed? What up, everybody? Appreciate y'all tuning in. What up, Jill? Let's see. Started. Hope everybody's having a blessed day. Looking forward to this live, man. I think this is definitely gonna be a good one. You got nice big eyes. Thank you. Right on. Yo, what up, Kris? Just hit that request to join live button. I'll bring you right up. Appreciate you. Hope everybody's having a blessed day. Wow, and what up, Kris? How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Blessing and progressing. Every day above ground is a good one.
Come on, I'm with you, man. Good to
Uh,
see you.
Likewise, it seemed like it's been a minute. I can't get over them eyes. I just can't. Well, thank you. Shout out to you. So for my audience who may be
Dang,
unaware,
it's starting early. Whoa,
would,
bro.
would you
Okay.
mind giving a quick synopsis of who you are, what it is that you do, and how you got started in what you do?
Oh man, that's the story already. But yes, my name's Kris Lacy. I'm a mindset coach and mental health and wellness advocate. I'm founder of the Renewed Life Wellness Company, where I partner with organizations to advance their communities by prioritizing their people
Mm.
through wellness keynotes, presentations, and workshops. So, how I got started. The short of it is I wasn't taking care of myself. And, more than once, not prioritizing my mental, physical, and emotional well being almost cost me my life.
Mm.
And so, because of the work that I've had to do, the work that I've had the opportunity to do in terms of personal development, it landed me in this space where I realized there are so many of us who don't know how to take care of ourselves well. And so it's my job, my responsibility to help others learn how to do that so that they can live well and serve the purpose that they're truly called to serve in the world.
I think that's dope, and shout out to you for walking in your purpose on purpose. So I got a list of questions here that people have sent in. That's on the topic of childhood trauma and self-worth. I feel like that kind of aligns with what we do, and we can kind of go through these questions, giving our
Okay.
insight in this 27 minutes that we got. That sounds
Okay.
smooth.
Yeah. That's what's up.
So how do I start identifying the specific ways my childhood experiences are shaping my behavior in relationships? And I'll let you start.
Wow. Um, well, I think that, self-awareness is the number one step to being able to improve your life. And so the fact that any person would be asking that question says that they've started to notice that there might be some patterns in their lives. And it's usually in their relationships. You might find yourself in the same type of situation and you wonder, how do I keep ending this relationship and ending up with someone just like that? Or how do I keep, landing this job or setting this goal, but not being able to go to the next level? And so when you start to acknowledge those things, it has something to do with who you are. The circumstances will not start to change until you have. And so if you find yourself in toxic situations, it's probably because there's some sort of attachment or something that you've experienced in your life that has attracted that or allowed that to play. So I mean, I think that's it. Just starting to take note of the cycles in your life and then being able to acknowledge them, accept ownership to some degree, right? Not to say that your childhood trauma is your fault, but your current circumstances as an adult, if we are speaking to adults, your current circumstances are based on the choices that you're currently making. Now it's time to look back and say, what happened to me or what could have happened that would allow me to continue to accept this kind of situation or this kind of treatment.
No, I think that's dope. Shout out to Steve. And yes, I blocked them. They were definitely going wild in the comments. I agree completely in regards to identifying recurring patterns. So just recognizing the different patterns that you find yourself in, and that can be a clear indication of the childhood trauma that's still impacting you in your adult life. And I always tell people when it comes to monitoring our triggers or them patterns that keep showing up in negative ways, frequency, intensity, and duration. So when it comes to a negative trigger that may keep reoccurring in your life, monitor the frequency of it. How frequently does this trigger actually happen? Is it something where you only get triggered once a year, or is this somewhere once a week you getting triggered, or once a day?
Mm-hmm.
Then if the intensity of it, so if it's just like a light irritation when you get triggered, or it's just like people don't even want to be around you, people don't want to associate with you, people don't even want to be in the house with you because just it's too intense. And then the duration, once you get triggered, how long does it last? Is it just a short amount of time? I think she accidentally left. I'm sure she gonna join right back. Is it a short amount of time, or is it a long period of time? So if we have situations where you're constantly triggered and you find yourself being triggered for long periods of time, it's not like where you just get triggered and then maybe like 5 minutes you're cool that back down, or in 10 minutes you're cool back down. No, you might find yourself needing a couple hours or a couple of days or shit. Some people don't cool off, they just always just stay triggered for that reason. So those are some indications that you probably need to work on your childhood trauma and that it's impacting you in negative ways. Is that if it's constant, if it's too frequent, so if the trigger is constantly happening, if it's too intense, if the trigger is super intense, or if the duration of it is too long, those are signs to monitor. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Hopefully I didn't kick
Yeah,
you
I
out.
don't know. No, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I made sure I just um, put everything on D and D, and hopefully we good now.
We back up in this thing.
Okay,
So
good.
yes, exploring patterns and then also exploring attachment styles. This can kind of give
Yeah,
you some understanding as to how what unresolved childhood trauma is still kind of impacting you in your adult
yeah.
relationships. And with attachment styles, you typically got secure, anxious, and avoidant. Now they have other ones like disorganized and things of that nature, but for the most part, it's just secure, anxious, and avoidant. Secure attachment styles is like you don't fear intimacy, nor are you chasing it and all that. If it comes, it comes. If it wants to go,
You're
you don't really feel no
okay.
type of way about it. And then when a person wants to leave your life, you don't feel it has anything to do with you. You just be like, okay, they just got something going on with them. That's a secure attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Anxious attachment style is like you're always constantly being in a relationship. You're never comfortable by yourself, but you also have a deep fear of abandonment. So you tend to become clingy or tend to become doing things that kind of self sabotage because you're like, this person's going to leave me inevitably. So I'm going to unconsciously do something to end it before they inevitably leave me. And then you have the avoidant attachment style, which is people who value independence over relationships. You can always tell an avoidant because they could be struggling desperately in front of you. Like, you need some help. They will always say no. But if you just jump in and help them, they won't stop you and all that. But how this is tied to our childhood trauma is because our attachment styles basically are formed around that. A secure
Mm-hmm.
person, their parents was there for them when they needed. Not that they overdid it or messed them, but it's just like when you really needed love and affection, your parents were there. If you got an anxious attachment style, for the most part, your parents were kind of like hot and cold. Sometimes they were present, other time they were distant. So you kind of grow up damn near being a people pleaser because you don't got a
Mm-hmm.
clear idea of what you need to do in order to be loved or be accepted. So you try to go above and beyond to be seen, to be heard. And then the avoiding is like every time you endeavor to love your parents or every time you endeavor to rely on them, it resulted in you being hurt. So you just don't even give people that opportunity anymore. That's why they could be struggling desperately and you be like, yo, you need some help. They're going to say no. It ain't got nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
It got everything to do with all the pain and all the disappointment that they experienced in childhood. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I think you touched on all of it.
I went off on a rant. I didn't want to. But so the second question that was sent in is, what role does forgiveness play in healing from childhood trauma, especially related to our self worth?
That's good. So, forgiveness is, I think, an essential part of your process, and it's necessary for us to be able to move on. And I think a lot of us have to be willing to forgive ourselves first, because not so for our childhood we had no control of that over that. The forgiveness for ourselves is like, because we tend to get really hard on ourselves. Where it's like, how do I keep landing myself in this situation, or why do I keep doing this? Like when you talk about again the avoidant, the person who will be like, I would rather sabotage my way out of this relationship and stonewall you and not have this conversation because I know that this is what's easier and I don't want to deal with my emotions. I'm going to, or the anxious person, you're going to people please and overcompensate and do all these things. So once you've acknowledged and kind of accepted the fact that you kind of have this attachment, at that point it's like, okay, I forgive me for allowing this to continue to take place in my life, and not recognizing my worth sooner. But in the same vein, forgiveness requires so much grace because you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why it's so important, because you don't know until like something happens where you're informed. You know what I'm saying? Someone else is telling you. You read a book. You don't have the awareness, or you choose to go to therapy. You don't know what you don't know. So just being able to have grace towards yourself and self-compassion and being able to acknowledge, like, okay, I did the best I could with the information that I had, and I operated and had these behaviors based on my past experiences. Now, now I can go back and also forgive the people who hurt me. And why people be like, well, why would I do that? Well, forgiveness does not mean justification. Let's just be very clear about that. Forgiveness does not justify what they did to you. Forgiveness does not you know, forget what they did to you. Forgiveness does not mean that you have to allow another person back into your life. It doesn't mean any of that. Forgiveness simply means I acknowledge, and now because I have compassion towards myself and my imperfections, I can acknowledge you for your imperfections, and no longer can you have that power over me. And when I choose to forgive you, then I release you and I release myself, more importantly, from what once defined me. And now for me, prayer is a huge part of my life. But once I've gotten to a place where I can forgive an abuser or someone who's hurt me in some way, shape, or form, I acknowledge too that those people also only do what they know how to do. Those people also only, acted that way towards me, probably because of something that happened to them. And it's really hard, difficult for us to conceptualize sometimes and see the people who have hurt us as also human. But when we practice self compassion first and forgive first, then it's easier to forgive others. What do you think about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. Hurt people hurt people. I
Yeah,
agree completely. And then when you were talking about forgiving self, I think that's so key. One of the main things that I like to help a lot of my clients with is separating identity from
right.
behavior. So many times, the reasons why our trauma tends to equate to low self worth is because we identify with the worst parts of our behavior. So we do a certain thing and then we'll just label ourselves as that.
Yeah.
You might try to start a business endeavor and maybe you try to do a couple of sales and then it doesn't happen. So you just say, I'm not good at sales. So I didn't identified with a failure that I had, or I didn't had a serious relationship, then it led to a breakup, and I'm like, if relationships ain't for me, now I didn't
Hmm.
identify with my behavior. I'm not good at that. I'm not good in relationships. I'm not
Yeah,
good at this. I'm not good at being
that's
a
not my
parent. I'm
thing.
not.
Hmm.
And so we got to learn to separate the identity from the behavior. Just because you did a certain behavior, that doesn't make it part of who you are. But with Joel Osteen would always say, your life will mirror what follows after I am. So you always got to just watch what you're saying I am, because that will control
Absolutely.
your autopilot.
Hmm.
And the thing about your autopilot, your subconscious mind, is that it takes zero energy to actually operate. It takes zero willpower. You're just going to unconsciously act that thing out. So you got to
Hmm.
be mindful. You got to guard your spiritual estate as far as what kind of thoughts take root up here. Uh, you can't control just thoughts. So it's not saying that negative thoughts won't come, but it's about the negative thoughts that you consciously entertain. It's about the negative
Correct.
thoughts that you dwell upon. It's about the negative thoughts that you consciously
Hmm.
dissect. And those things, the longer you dwell upon it, the more it starts to actually feel real in the body. And then the second part, outside of separating our behavior from our identity, is you talked about the benefit of forgiveness. And so many times we're taught to, like, yeah, you want to forgive so you can be healthy, because we know, forgiveness will if we don't forgive, it can increase our blood pressure, it can cause
Hmm.
cancer, it can cause all these different defects in the body.
Yeah.
But we're not really taught to forgive just so we can be happy. Not just so much that, anger does more to the vessel it's stored in than anything it could be poured on. So a lot of times being angry is like drinking poison but expecting somebody else to
Definitely.
die.
Yep.
We think that, me being angry and having this energy inside of me, it ain't doing
Mm-hmm.
nothing for them. They not even thinking about you. It ain't affecting them. Only
Yeah.
thing it's doing is wearing and tearing on the health in your body. Only thing it's doing is wearing and tearing on your peace. So that's definitely, I would say, the importance of forgiveness and the role that it can play on your self-worth for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure. And I think just want to make it a point to say, as we are acknowledging our childhood trauma, because I think that this topic of healing from trauma and mental health, all of that, I love that I don't want to say it's a trend. People are becoming more aware, and sometimes it can be a trending topic. But I am really happy that we are in this space finally where we're acknowledging what we've been through. We can still be present and forgive our parents, if they are still living, or whoever, you know what I'm saying, our caregivers. In the same vein, we're raising children. It is essential that we are conscious of the words that we are speaking to our children, because when you mentioned identifying with something, our kids will begin to identify with whatever we tell them repeatedly, because when they come, they're learning everything new, right? We are the beginning of their exposure to all things. And so as we began to, and I had to, acknowledge this for myself, especially with my oldest daughter, I realized there was a season where she did not like doing chores, and I would be like, "Stop being lazy, get up and do something." And I remember one day she was talking to me and she was like, "Mom, I'm lazy. I just don't like doing stuff." And I was like, "Excuse me?
Mhm.
What do you mean? You're lazy? If I tell you not to be lazy and you do the thing, it's like I didn't say you are lazy. I'm saying don't be." But she identified with that because that's what she heard repeatedly.
Yeah.
And so it's essential that as we are acknowledging our own traumas and the things that we're saying to ourselves, that we are so super hyper vigilant about what it is that we're saying to our children about themselves.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And the interesting thing about the subconscious mind, like you said, the subconscious, when a child is first born from 0 to 5, roughly 0 to 6,
Mm-hmm.
is strictly a subconscious. So the difference between a conscious and a subconscious, our conscious mind, we can deny
Choose, right. Mm-hmm.
information. Yep, we can choose, we can neglect it, we can accept it, reject it, whatever it is. Subconscious can't do none of that. It just got
Mm-hmm.
to accept everything that goes. And it can't, the subconscious, even as an adult, it can't distinguish between not. So if I was to say, don't think of a purple cow, what's the first image that comes to your
A
mind?
purple
A
cow,
purple
right?
cow.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So when we're telling people not to do something, it really gives an indication to the subconscious to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember me and my homie Eric, we were in a store and he wanted to buy a bike for his son, but his son didn't really know how to ride a bike. So he tried to like teach him inside the store. He was like, don't go there, don't do that, don't. I was like, nigga, tell him what to do. Like,
Tell
tell him
them
what you want him to
what to
do.
do. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
you just keep
good. Tell
telling
them
him
what
what
you
don't
want them to
do.
do.
Like, tell him,
Yeah,
because
stop.
everything
Don't
you
do
told him
that.
not
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
is exactly what he did.
Yeah.
Like, and they tell us when you're learning how to drive sports cars, if for whatever reason you lose control of the vehicle, you want to look where you want to land. Don't look where
Where
you
you
want to crash or you don't want to crash, because it's
mm-hmm.
an unconscious phenomenon where we're going to guide whatever vehicle we're in the direction
That
that
we're
we're looking in. So you'll
looking.
see certain people like on an open road and it's just a pole and then a car hit a pole. And you're like, how the hell did this nigga hit that pole when it's like literally just open space all around it? How
How
did, and then when that
did that
person
happen?
when he wakes back up after being knocked out from hit the pole, he just like, man, the last thing I remember is that damn pole, because he was just focused on the thing that he didn't actually
Didn't
want to
want to do.
hit. So
Yeah.
I think it's
And
great power. I'm
that's how
sorry.
our brain, oh no,
No,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
you good. I was done.
Okay. That's our brain. It's called the reticular activating system. So it's wherever whatever we focus on, or people say it all the time, wherever your focus goes, your energy flows. And our brain is designed to create patterns so that things are easy, right? That like my brain, I don't have to tell my arms to do this, right? My brain just knows that that's what I'm trying to do. And so our neural pathways are created with these thoughts that we consistently think, or whatever we focus on. Again, that's where our brain is like, okay, there. So if I'm saying I am not good enough, your brain is going to look for reasons why you're not good enough. If you're going to consistently say, like you said, I'm not good at this, or that's just not my thing, your brain is going to consistently look for things to prove, to find the evidence for what it is that you're saying to yourself. And so that's why it's so important to be, I love when you said I am, everything you said, I am powerful, I am capable, I am creative, I am essential. Those things, being able to say those things and being so conscious of what you say after that is how we retrain our brain to think differently.
I agree wholeheartedly. And something that's
I
also
am rich in
tied to,
spirit. That's good.
I love that.
Sizzle said.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Stiz,
Sizzle. Mm-hmm.
Stizzo. Um, and that is so key too. And something that I always like to make my clients aware of is, and it's something that every brain does, just to stop from being overwhelmed because it's so much information that's constantly going on at all times. Like, and just for you to be able to, everybody on this live, to be able to even focus on what we're seeing, you're not thinking about the sound of your air conditioners. You're not thinking about birds outside. You're not thinking about the kids running around. You're not thinking about the car sounds outside. You're not thinking about the sensation of your skin touching your clothes. You're deleting out all of this information so you can focus on what's important. So this ties into what you were talking about in regards to the reticular activating system, because the brain can only consciously focus on about 2,000 bits of information per second. But subconsciously, we're all processing roughly around like 4 billion bits of information per second. This is exactly why two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away
Have a
thinking we
different
experienced
outlook.
two
Mm-hmm.
completely different
Something
outlooks,
different.
because the 2,000 bits of information that I could focus on consciously is completely different than the 2,000 bits of information she focused on consciously.
Yep.
Although we both absorb the same 4 billion bits of information subconsciously. It's all
That's
in the
good.
subconscious. That's why I always tell people to trust the hunches that kind
Yeah.
of come up from within. Don't
Mm-hmm.
lean. That's also why the Bible say don't lean on
On
your own
understanding.
understanding
That's
consciously, because
good.
everything is in your subconscious. But also that's where your trauma is too. So certain people misconstrue. This is also why you got to forgive, because certain people misconstrue thinking they're being led by their intuition when in actuality they're being led by a trauma
But yeah,
response.
trauma response. That's
Their
good. Yep.
unresolved wounds is what's guiding them and what's telling them to stay away from
That's
this or to
right.
move towards this. And they're thinking that it's intuition or God. In actuality, you just wounded.
And before we can't even get to the next question, this is so good because that is also why you need to forgive yourself, because your brain is doing what it's supposed to do. Your brain is trained, it's supposed to tell you when to be afraid of something. So the response is just your brain functioning like it's supposed to. So there's nothing wrong with you. You're like when you're growing up and they're like, don't touch the stove. You have to learn that the stove is hot. Once you learn it's hot, you're not gonna put yourself in that situation again. So the response is natural. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you've experienced trauma and now you're responding to that. But at this point, we have to identify whether or not what it is that we experience and how our behavior, what our behavior looks like, is serving us well. Are you content with where you are in your life? And I'm not saying content because you're guarded and you got, you put yourself in a prison and you got, bulldogs and the iron gates around you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, do you have freedom? Do you feel peace? Do you enjoy your relationships? Have you experienced joy lately? Being able to say that, that's how you know whether or not you have some things you may need to heal from. But do know that in terms of forgiving yourself, your body did what it was supposed to do by responding that way. But now we have to retrain our minds and our bodies to feel safe again.
Fact. And then feeling peace within our own bodies too, not even just in the relationships with other
Mm-hmm.
people, but do you
Absolutely.
like your own
For
company?
sure.
That's really a huge
Yes.
sign in regards to do you feel like you got work to do or not, because that's how you know whether you're avoidant or is trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're always trying to smoke, trying to drink, trying to have sex, trying to
Yep.
eat something, trying to just do, and not necessarily you're just doing those things to do it, but if you're doing it as a means to escape a feeling that you are
Yeah.
feeling, that's a clear sign that you actually have to heal. And you got to be mindful of that. And to your point that the brain is doing what it's supposed to do. And, once you touch a hot stove, you just got to know, all right, don't touch hot stoves anymore. But a lot of us are like the cat that touched the hot stove and therefore it just learned to not touch
Any
any stoves ever
at
again.
all. Right. For
So we
yes,
get burned in a
absolutely.
relationship and we like, man, I ain't doing a relationship no
Right.
more. I try one business endeavor and it fails, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not trying. And so we got to do a better job. And this is why I think hiring a healing coach or actually doing therapy, getting a coach, somebody on the outside, one is because it's hard to see the picture when you're standing in the frame. And then two, because it's hard to see the picture when you're standing in the frame, it's hard for you to distinguish what are all the characteristics that led to that stove actually being hot, Because again, you
Mhm.
don't want to stay away from all stoves. You just want to learn what are the hot stoves. And this is
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking to whatever your trauma is. Instead
Mhm.
of just, I'm just staying away from all things that resemble this. It's like, no, let me specifically what it is about that. So people come, I'm tired of just relationships. All niggas is like this. Okay, well, let's just figure, instead of being all niggas, let's just figure
Mhm.
out what did these guys that you dealt with in the past have in common.
Right.
So therefore, now we know specifically
Yeah.
what it actually is. Because to the point in regards to what we said with the deleting, distortion, and generalization, if we got an idea in our subconscious mind that something doesn't exist, it could literally be right in front of us and we won't see it. We do this all the time. They call it a scotoma in psychology, which is basically a mental blind spot. So somebody could be like, hey, can you get that off the counter? And you're like, yo, I'm looking on the counter. I don't see it.
I
They
don't
be like,
see
yo, it's
it.
right next to whatever. And you like, I'm looking right there and I do not see it. Then
Mhm.
they come right in front of you, grab it. And you like, I
I
swear
swear
I
I
was
ain't see
just looking
it.
right there and I did.
Yeah.
But it's because we told ourselves it wasn't there. We don't see with our eyes. We see through them with our
Mhm.
mind. But our mind can only see what our eyes can only see what our mind can comprehend. And our mind can only comprehend what our emotional wounds allow us to see.
Ooh.
So again, if you got these emotional wounds that's telling you that ain't no good dudes out there, then they could literally be right in front of your face and you will not see them because you hypnotize yourself into believing that they're not there. They did a study called The Frog's Eye Teaches the Frog's Brain, and they basically, a frog eats flies. So a fly is always moving. But you can put a frog in a cage full of dead flies that's only been dead for 1 second. The frog will literally starve itself to death because it can't recognize it as food. But then you could put a pencil in front of a frog and just go like this all day, and it'll keep striking it all day long because it just thinks that, because it's wired to think that what it eats moves. So
Mhm.
we're the exact same way. We got a certain image in our mind of what we think something's supposed to be. And because our emotional wounds got us believing that it's supposed to be that certain way, it could literally be like abundantly in front of us and we will not see it at all
Mhm.
because we're blinded by our wounds.
And to be clear, it's not that this person will walk by and you won't acknowledge them or you won't be attracted to them. It's that you may find someone attractive, but you will find everything wrong with that person, ignoring every good thing possible about them. But you will find every wrong thing because it reminds you or attaches you to some place in your past, which is so sad for us because so many of us miss out on great opportunities because we are lost looking at things for the problems, focusing on anything that's negative, and then again, trying to protect ourselves to make sure that we don't experience or re traumatize ourselves when that's in actuality what we're doing by giving up on a possible good future.
And also, why we need to heal, when you just said re traumatizing ourselves, and I know we only got 2 minutes left, the brain can't tell the difference between something we vividly imagine and an
It's
actual
something
experience.
that's
So
right.
every time we are ruminating over past experiences,
Mm-hmm.
your nervous system is really taking it as if that situation is happening to you
Yeah.
again and again
Yeah.
and again and again and again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not taking it as if it's something that happened to you. It's taking it as if it's happening to you in that
In the
particular
moment.
moment. That's another reason why I believe we tend to, especially within our race, have the lowest life expectancy because we don't get taught how to cope effectively. So we just keep everything inside and constantly
Internalize
internalize and ruminate over it over and over and over and over again, and the wear and tear on the body,
the
because you
mental
can think
and
about something
physical.
traumatic and it will start to increase your heart rate.
Yep,
It could throw off your digestive system, it
absolutely.
could throw off your sleeping system, it could throw off your breathing rate.
Yep,
So it's just doing damage to the unconscious and subconscious systems. We got 12 unconscious systems that's going in our body at all times, and it damages us. That's why we could be stressed and now we can't eat, or
that's
we got
right.
the bubble guts and all that, or we can't sleep, or we're
Mm-hmm.
just sweating and all that stuff because it's throwing our system out of whack. That's why we got to heal. But I know you only got a limited time. So for the people who listen to this and it resonated with them and they want to work with you, get you as a coach,
Yeah.
what services do you offer and how can they actually work with you?
Yeah, that's good. Oh man, I hate to cut it short. I feel like I got time for one more question because this is such good conversation.
This is
I
dope.
and honestly, I expected that we would spend our whole time, but in my mind, we just had some hiccups with preparing for school tomorrow. So,
No
but
worries.
no, let's do one more question. I ain't ready yet. Let's do one more question. I can stay for one more question. Because
Okay.
this has just been such a good conversation, and I know that people are going to get value. And of course, you're just going to have to bring me back so that we can continue, because there are so many people who are struggling with this right now.
Facts.
And it's in general. This will never be an old topic,
Yeah.
right? Because life, right? We're all going
And
to
I got
experience
15
trauma.
questions here,
Not
and the one I'm
15.
about to ask you is only three. It's only the third
Oh
question,
my
so yeah,
gosh. Okay,
yeah.
so maybe
We'll do
part
another
three.
part four
Okay.
or five.
Right. Okay. Okay, cool. One more. Okay, one more.
All right.
And then I'll put it back.
So I'll read you two, and you let me know which one you want to answer. How can I develop healthier attachment styles if my childhood trauma led to insecure attachments? Or what are the potential setbacks or challenges I might face during this healing process, and how can I navigate them?
Okay, so I think a better close would be possible setbacks. So for today, possible setbacks. Well, there are no possible setbacks. You will experience setbacks because we are a progressive people. And I know that naturally it might feel like, we're not going to see change. Well, no, we're not going to see change overnight, right? And so the first setback might be your perspective. So let's just get that fixed right now, and understanding that this is a process, that and healing is lifelong, because we're going to continuously run into people, and we're going to continuously experience grief of some sort. We all have wins and we have losses. And so first, being able to understand going into the healing journey that there is no arrival, okay? Why? Because there'll always be something we're working on and growing towards. But that doesn't mean you can't get to a place of safety and healing and learning at some point how to cope well, so that as you experience trauma, because we will, as we experience grief, because we will, as we do life, because we will, that we will now be able to properly process what it is that we're experiencing and be able to get through things more smoothly, let me just say. So I think it starts there, understanding that as you're going into the process. But then some setbacks will be, for example, and I can just speak from my own life, healing from parent wounds is a challenge, especially when two things: your parents are still unhealthy and they are still in your life, um, and and of course, if you're having to care for those same parents who may not have cared for, who have, cared for you in unhealthy ways. So this is just one example of many. But when certain people are still in your life, or you have to remain in relationship, or you choose to remain in relationship with certain people who have already harmed you, that's easy. It's easier to be re-traumatized. And that might be a hang up, right? Because naturally you're still going to want to be angry about what they did, or you're still angry because of who they are, or not in your, or are not in your life. And so those types of things, understanding that you may have to continuously forgive people, you may have to continuously learn how to cope and re-strategize and create new boundaries that will allow you to healthfully manage those relationships. I think, you know, another good example of healing mentally and emotionally is, again, this is another example of me. Because of my trauma, I now have fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia is an autoimmune disease where, because my body was constantly in a stress response, now my body always thinks I'm in pain, but nothing. And now I can't do some of the things, or physically, like for example, when I talked about my daughter's
Yeah,
hair, things
yeah.
got thrown off because I used to braid hair. So yesterday I started to try this new style on her hair. And as I was doing it, my hands cramped so bad I could barely open them. They were like stuck like this afterwards. And so it was painful. And so because that kind of threw things off, we just had to figure out hair anyway. So I said all that to say, though, this trauma that I experienced for so many years is affecting my life, and I'm in a good space. You know what I'm saying? Like, my life looks completely different than it did years ago. But I've seen this progressively get worse, and now it's the worst that it's ever been. And my lifestyle is a blessing to me, because I think it just speaks to the work that we need to talk about when we talk about adverse childhood experiences, and why this work is necessary to understand, because we need to heal, right? It's an essential part of how we do life and how we change or shift our legacy is acknowledging what happened to us and making sure we don't pass it down, you know what I'm saying, to our children. So for me, again, mentally, I might be in a great space, but sometimes when I physically feel this pain, yes, exactly. Disease equal comes from dis-ease. And so constantly feeling pain can be super discouraging for me. So that does sometimes set me back in my emotional health and my mental health. So again, physical pain might affect your healing process. What does that mean? You have a choice at every stage of your life, and since you've already selected to forgive yourself, what we're not going to do is focus on our circumstances or our health and act as if we do not have any ability to manage it. So it's now my responsibility to eat well. It's now my responsibility to have an anti-inflammatory diet. It's my responsibility to make sure I'm intentional about, exercising regularly and moving my body. It's my responsibility to make sure I have a team or a community of people that I know that they know, because I struggled with depression and anxiety for so many years, that I might get to a low space because I have been suicidal and had suicidal ideation for a good half of my life. I have people who know that, who I can call and say, hey, I'm not in a good space. I need some support. So I have put parameters and things in place to make sure I'm prioritizing my well-being. The important part is knowing you're going to have setbacks on the healing journey. Just know that your wellness is your responsibility. And if you're serious about it and you're going to change your life and you're going to change your legacy and you want longevity, you're going to have to do the work that's necessary to claim your victory, because it's yours if you want it.
No, I think that that's powerful. You said a couple things I definitely want to respond to. Ballerina 83, I butchered that. I'm terribly sorry. Hopefully you're still on. That said, I can hear my mom's voice and get upset. I don't know what to do about
Oh,
that.
that's
If you're still on, please comment. Let me know if you're still on. If you are, do this really quickly. So play whatever your mom says that typically pisses you off in your head, but change her voice into like a little baby's voice, or change it to like the little gingerbread cookie from Shrek, or you know the Muffin Man, and like do it right now, and like let me know if it changes the response in your nervous
yeah.
system when you were playing your mom's thing in your head, because most of the time it's the tone that you're responding to that gets locked in your nervous system, that's what you're responding to.
Hmm.
But once you change the tone, her words typically don't have power. You're most likely to start laughing.
And
uh,
can I respond to that as well?
yep.
Because I personally have had that issue with my own mother, and so with that, the compassion piece that we talked about, I no longer hear my mother's voice as someone who's angry or someone who can blame me, or I see my mother as a human that's hurt. And so when she speaks, sometimes my my lens has completely changed from this person who wasn't there sometimes, or who said these things that hurt me, or who whatever is toxic in whatever way, or has this issue. I now see her as, man, like, you're someone who really does need support right now. You know what I'm saying? Think about how we see complete strangers on the street. We see complete, people, and we empathize with them and we feel bad because we don't know how good or how bad they are. The only reason we don't empathize with the people that hurt us is because we know we've seen that side of them, but realize they are also people. And often the reason that they are operating out of that, whether it's just arrogance, we have parents that will, talk down on us, or, try to criticize everything that we do, or will always complain. I don't know what your story is, but the reality is you get to choose how you view people. And when you start to pay attention, like, man, why do they complain all the time? Probably because they were always criticized. You know what I'm saying? Why do they scream all the time? Probably because, that's the only way that they feel like they can be in control, because somebody took their control from them at an early age. Something happened to them where they didn't have control over their circumstances. So now they feel like that's how they have control over people, by
Our
yelling and
childhood
demanding.
solutions become our adulthood problems. So
Absolutely.
that's so great, because that I had to do the same thing with my father. Like my father wasn't really around like that. I felt a hope, but what helped me out is to understand his story. Because so many
Yeah.
times we're filtering it through the lens of our story.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all the things I experienced, all the mentors I had, and I'm like, why ain't my dad doing that? And then God told me one day, well, God ain't been, your dad ain't been exposed to all the stuff you've been exposed
Yeah.
to. My dad ain't been
Yeah.
to the teachers, the mentors that I had, the workshops that I've been through, the classes that I've been through. He don't know all the stuff in emotional intelligence, relational intelligence. He don't know all that stuff. His dad wasn't in his life at all. My dad had an experience of being one of them kids waiting outside for 12 hours, waiting on his dad, just hoping he'd come. Oh, is that dad? Oh, is that dad? Oh, is that dad? Oh, is that? Like his dad wasn't there at all. Gave my grandma 6 kids and didn't like no physical presence, no financial help, no nothing. So in my mind, and my dad, all his greatest pain was watching my grandma constantly have to work to struggle and then always getting clowned on in
Mm,
school wearing holy clothes and stuff. I never experienced that.
right.
I've never seen my dad, but I'll come home and have fat farms, Sean John, Pelly Pale, 7 pair of shoes. I was
Wow.
always clean cut, always dressed. Again, I would never see him, but I've never been evicted ever, ever. Like me and my mom's never had to experience that. Again, never had to been a person that was never like fly or never like really like appealing wise and all that, had a nice regalia. And so when I that clicked in my mind, I'm like, damn, like based upon what you thought a man was and a father was, you really
Mm-hmm.
knocked it out of the park
Yeah.
because you didn't get exposed to all the men I got exposed to. Now, if you
Yeah.
did and still chose to be how you was, then I
Right.
could probably feel something. But based upon what you experienced, based upon the men that you grew up around, you knocked it out of the park. You was an
Yeah.
A plus dad, and I can't
Come
expect
on.
you to be anything
Anything
else. And I
more?
remember when I
Yeah.
communicated that to him, he paused for a second and he took a deep breath, and then the nigga just started crying. And he was
Oh,
just like,
don't
man,
make me cry.
I
Oh.
can't even tell you what that means to hear that. And then the crazy thing is though, literally right after I said that, I was like, man, you know what? I feel like you were the best dad you think that you knew how to be. And I
Yeah.
don't think couldn't expect you to be anything else. And literally at that moment, he owned up to everything that I wanted him to own up to my whole life. All my
Wow.
whole life, I was trying to get him to own up to things. Dad, you need to do this, and you should have been this, and you wasn't there for me. You wasn't coming to my track meets. You wasn't
Mm-hmm.
doing this. You wasn't. And like literally, when I just took time to understand his story, it was like, man, you know what, Dad? I feel like you was the best
Mm-hmm.
dad that you knew how to be. Literally in that moment, I didn't even have to tell him to own up to anything. He immediately did it. So I agree wholeheartedly with you. I don't even know where that story came from, but I feel like
Yeah,
it
no,
resonated
no,
with something we was talking about.
absolutely no. It was no, it was so on point because it just reminds you that, I always say that there's no villains in my story.
Mm.
And that's because I have taken the time to get to know the people that have hurt me or the things that they were dealing with at the time that they hurt me, right? It could be a deeply rooted relationship, or it could just be one of those relationships that didn't last very long. But when something happened where a relationship ended or there was damage done, I look at the person and I'm like, oh, that's why they did that. And I no longer have to take on that pressure of believing that it's my fault. And you made such a great point because that's exactly the perspective that I took on. My parents did the best that they could with the information that they had. And so also remember, as we are on this healing journey, okay, and now I really do have to hop off because I'm doing too much. But as we are on this healing journey, it is not our responsibility to right every single wrong of the people of our past. I think that legacy healing begins with the choice to just heal and be intentional. And while your father may not have been the father you really wanted him to be, he was the father that he felt was an improvement from the one that he had. And I know that both of my parents would say or could try to say the same thing. They did the best that they could and they took it a step further. And so our job is to make sure we do as much healing as we can do, but not feel burdened to feel like we have to fix every generational pattern or every generation because that is too much of a burden to bear. But I do say, if you want to see something different in your future, it is your responsibility to stay on this healing journey. You do not get to continue to make excuses for what has happened to you or using that as an excuse to keep you from moving forward. Let's be intentional about remaining on this journey so that we can now provide some new, we can be better than our parents were. And hopefully, our goal is to make sure our kids are better than we are. And that is how we know we did what we needed to do.
And it just keeps going from there.
It
I
just keeps
agree
going from there.
wholeheartedly. And let me answer the question real quick. So, a setback that I think you will have to experience on the healing journey is recognizing your triggers. So,
Oh,
just
that's
be mindful of the
good.
things that set you off and understand that you are going to get set off along the way. Don't beat yourself up on it. Don't feel bad. Separate behavior from identity. Just because you did it doesn't mean that's who you
That's
are. I always
good.
tell people what you did is not as important as what you're not currently doing. Let me say
Mm,
that again. What you did is not as important as what you're not currently doing. So many times we might have did something in the past and we give it so much attention and so much focus and we just make it seem like it means all this stuff. But we ignore the fact that we ain't done it in 5 years, or we ain't done it in 7 months, or we ain't done it in however long. So the fact that you're not doing it now is more important than that the fact that you did it in the
Mm-hmm.
past. So just give yourself a little bit of grace. Know that you're not going to be perfect. Surround yourself with people who have the outcome that you currently desire. So find
Ooh,
people who had
that's
the trigger
good.
that you currently struggle with, but they overcame it and they're on the other side of it. Just like what we
Mm-hmm.
mostly learned from our parents, they didn't teach us. It just rubbed off on us from being around them. That's what's going to happen when you have these mentors that have the emotional development that you actually desire. They're just going to start rubbing off on you, their emotional temperament and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So if a person wants to work with you, how can they work with you? Then we'll say
Oh,
adios.
okay, good question. Yeah, so again, I am a mindset coach and I am a public speaker. So, as a mental health and wellness advocate, I go into spaces. I'm usually hired by administrators to come in and speak to their staff. And my goal is to get into other spaces where I'm serving public servants, because people that are forward facing, that have to constantly deal with people, for example, educators, right? Those are the people who I feel are suffering during this time, because it requires so much to deal with other people that are hurting. And so people who want to hire me can visit Kris Speaks Life. That's Kris speakslife.com, and you can book me to come out and do a keynote presentation. I discuss things like burnout, prioritizing mental health and wellness, recovering from burnout, I should have said, and how to prevent it in the future. I discuss things like resiliency and leveraging adversity and being able to, show up as the most emotionally intelligent and effective version of yourself, so that you can continue to make the impact that you're called to make in the world. So that's it. You can follow me here too, Kris Speaks Life. That's me on all social media, but I mostly live here on Instagram. So
Hey, make
this has been
sure y'all hit this
great.
drop down button and hit that follow button. It has been, and I'm looking forward to part two for sure.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. Thank you for having me on, and we'll talk soon. Good night, you guys.
No problem.
Thanks, bro, for
Thank you.
joining on. Terrence, everybody. You guys have been wonderful tonight. I know we didn't get to respond to every single person, but thank you guys. I appreciate you. Yes, yes, yes. All right, y'all have a great night. I got to go get ready for school. All
All right, you be blessed.
right, you
Mamo,
too.
shout out to you.
Yeah. Bye.
So the Brill 83, I'm terribly sorry. Did that work for you though? Changing your mom's tone to either the baby's tone or changing it to the gingerbread cookie from Shrek? And did that kind of lessen the stress of your mom's voice playing in your head? Somebody asked, how do I tap into my purpose? I will have you dwell upon a series of questions. So the first question is, what did you desire to be when you were 14 years old? What did you dream of being? The second one is, what have you been doing in your occupation for like the last 10 years? The next one would be, what can you talk about like effortlessly on a Saturday night just with your friends? The next one will be, what does strangers like compliment you on? The next one will be like, what are you passionate about? So if like money wasn't an object, how would you spend your time? What would you actually be doing? The next one is like, what do you have great skills in that people will pay you for? So it's not even necessarily that you enjoy doing it, but that you just have a proficient skill in it to the point where people would actually pay you for those particular services. And when you dwell on all those questions, you can kind of find where they kind of tie in together at. And it's been my experience that where they tie in together at will give you the greatest indication as far as what your purpose is in life. That's how I was able to find mine. It did actually. Thank you for that tip. No problem. No problem. I'm glad you were able to get benefit from that. Yo, what up, Newt? Good to see you. I appreciate y'all for taking the time. If anybody else got any questions, I can answer it real quick. If not, I'm about to jump off. I think I answered everybody's questions that's in the comments so far. But this was a great discussion, man. A great conversation. If no other questions, comments, or concerns, I am about to go kick it with baby girl, man. So y'all have a great night, man. Be blessed. Peace.